ACT is getting you answers with early voting just 2 days away. We went to Bladen County where town leaders have decided not to provide early voting in that municipal election. WECT's Ashley Balsavias just returned from Bladen County asking officials why this is the case. Ashley, they say it all comes down to money.
It does, Fran. With fewer races on the ballot and even fewer candidates, election officials say it's too expensive. But others fear it could prevent some people from casting their vote.
In 2023, it seems every election would come with early and absentee voting, but that's not the case this year for municipal elections in Bladen County.
It hurts people of color also because many people that do vote of color are mostly of the older age.
Mike McKinley is the president of the Bladen County NAACP and believes the decision not to have early and absentee voting could lead to voter suppression. But town leaders in the county say it was a financial decision, not political.
We were very concerned to make sure that people had opportunity to vote and such, but based upon nobody running against the incumbents and no referendums, it was just being good stewards of taxpayers' money was the decision behind it.
The Bladen County Board of Election staff says it would cost the towns and taxpayers more than $6,000 to pay employees to work the polls for early voting. Wanda Monroe is the Bladen County Elections Director. She's in agreement that it doesn't make sense to spend the money for this year's election.
Most of the candidates are running unopposed, so it wouldn't be financially feasible for them to have early voting.
However, she's aware the decision might get some backlash.
There are some senior citizens that depend on absentee voting, so it will be an inconvenience to them.
And McKinley says now is simply not the time to make it more difficult to vote.
Our voting rights are so fragile now. I never thought that I would see a time that it would be that way because our votes are very important.
Now, without early and absentee voting for the upcoming municipal elections, the only way you can vote in Bladen County is in person at your polling place. And remember, Election Day is quickly approaching. It's 3 weeks from today. Fran?
All right, Ava. Yes, it is. Something